Yes, you saw that thumbnail correctly. CNN has been found guilty of defamation. In fact, this is really, really good news. And what's going to be a landmark case, and one that basically lasted about as long as it was supposed to. We got to the end of the road for fake news, CNN being one of the purveyors that have so aggressively been involved in crafting narratives and not actually following the truth of the matter. In fact, this is probably going to lead to a whole lot of news organizations changing the way that they do business. Let's jump into the story itself. This is from Fox News, but that's not where we're going to get the ultimate verdict rendering. We're going to go a little bit into the history of this case. As of early this morning, 10:31 Eastern Time, there had not been a decision. The jury had been in deliberations into the second day, and these gentlemen had reacted to the lack of decision, noting that at least they were being quite thoughtful of what they were going to render, and for a lot of reasons, they needed to be. This needs to be a situation that is legally impenetrable in the future so that it will survive any kind of appeal and its progression likely all the way up to the Supreme Court, because the last thing any of these news organizations want to do is lose in a situation like this. Let's take a look at the balance of this story from U.S. News and World Reports. Originally, this came actually from the AP, which we all know is fairly tainted news organization as it is. But CNN found guilty in Florida in that trial, libeling Navy veteran in Afghan story. And it was egregious if you've read through the coverage or followed any of this particular trial. The Panama City, Florida jury on Friday found CNN guilty of defaming a U.S. Navy veteran in a 2021 story about people paid to rescue endangered Afghans following the Taliban takeover of the country during that, disastrous withdrawal by the Biden administration. A Florida jury found CNN guilty. In that case, the Panama City, Florida folks deliberated for more than 8 hours starting Thursday before ruling in favor of Zachary Young, who blamed CNN for destroying his business by showing his face on screen in a story about a black market smuggling out desperate Afghans for high fees. Not something he was actually doing. The jury awarded Young $5 million in damages and is now being asked to determine whether CNN must pay additional punitive damages. That's where we are in the case cycle. And I imagine that after I saw the instructions earlier today, this is going to be huge. Millions of dollars out the door, obviously so far, and more millions to follow. It was an unusual guilty ruling against a media outlet in a defamation case. Libel laws are generally protective of news organizations, and plaintiffs must meet a high standard to prove defamation. And while the latter is true, so indeed is the former. Young had argued that his business targeted sponsors who could afford to pay for Afghans to get out, not individual Afghans charged as much as $10,000 for the service. While CNN said it was wrong to use the phrase black market, it considered that its reporting on Young was accurate, which it was not. I know Zach feels heard in a way that he hasn't felt in over 3 years, Young's lawyer Devin Friedman said after the verdict. This, of course, was produced by the Associated Press, who has seemed quite pre-positioned on this particular trial, along with some other news organizations. And to be fair, they kind of have to be, because CNN, if it were to actually have this process all the way to the end of the road instead of settling it like they should have, is basically going to create a very difficult situation for other news organizations who peddle in fake news or propaganda. The idea that in their own internal communications, which you should absolutely read, we're all about getting this guy. In fact, they say so. They even call him some derogatory names, which you would certainly expect out of the refinement of CNN. And I say that in all sarcasm. This particular story is likely only the beginning, as more and more citizens are now going to go after the very news organizations that have become narrative factories for one particular political position. This will certainly change the way we get news from these organizations, and likely a lot of decision making will be made in the next few years about how quickly to get rid of them. That's right. They don't seem to be particularly profitable anymore. In fact, the more times they're wrong and proven wrong, the less people come to rely on them for accurate information. I'm certainly one of those people. How about you? But I ask you, do you watch any mainstream news anymore? Or, like me, do you tend to get it more from perhaps X or YouTube creators that you can trust who've done a bit of research and followed up when they've been wrong, or even when they've been right? Do you think it is true that the new media is the alternate media that has been telling people the truth for the course of the last 8 to 10 years? Of course. And do you find that CNN has probably been the leader of the pack for the longest period of time, and we're only going to get their tail caught when public sentiment shifted against the mainstream lies, against the mainstream misinformation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. And as always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya for real.